So the All Blacks will be in action for the last time in November up against Italy this weekend after a narrow defeat up against the French last week. But in this video, we're going to be trying our best to predict what Scott Robertson will be going with. I think we'll see quite a few changes here, but the question is, in which jerseys will we get to see them? And in this video, it is myself and it is also Rugbyitch. First of all, mate, a 1-point thriller up against the French. Even though it was a defeat for the All Blacks, do you see a lot of learnings that they can take from that game?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think there's a lot that the All Blacks can take from that game, and definitely something they can use in this Italy game.
So, I will ask you a quick question as well. Do you think Razor's going to make drastic changes here, or only a couple positions? At the end of the day, normally the mindset is if he has lost one game, he goes with a very similar side the next week to try and right those wrongs. Yeah. Do you see the big switches coming?
I think he'll make some switches because I think going off the fixture list that they had, they probably prepared ahead of the time, kind of like what they were going to do in each particular game. And I think when you had a fixture list of what, like you had England, Ireland, France, and Italy, you can definitely see this game as the one where they would be a bit more open to making some switches. So that's what I'd like to think Razor would have in mind.
So with that in mind, in your front row, how many switches have you decided to make?
Well, I've made only one switch in my front row. I've gone pretty standard, I guess, in this case, and it's probably the obvious one, really. But I've gone with Tamati Williams at the number 1. I've then gone with Safa Moore at number 2, and then Tyrell Lomax at the number 3. So I could have gone with Cody Taylor here, but I just think they're going to try out Safa Moore here. And again, you do have George Bell, who I was considering, but I just think Almua is probably the one I want to see a bit more. So that's the reason why I've started it.
Okay, so just like yourself, I have actually got Asafa Moore as my starting number 2. Number 1, I have gone with Ethan de Groot just at the stretch that maybe he's going to get to play. We know it was a disciplinary issue, but at what stage that ends, we have no idea. So I've put him in there just in case. But of course, if he is not available due to that disciplinary issue, I would just like yourself have it. Tamati Williams, number 2, Asafa Moore. I feel like this will be a great game for him. Up against the Italians, being able to crash that ball forward. Off the bench, he had a little bit of an impact up against the French, but nowhere near enough to warrant, I think, putting him off the bench again here. Instead, I would much prefer seeing him in the starting side. And then Tyrell Lomax, I mean, he's been the starting 3 pretty much all throughout the year. Maybe this is a game we see Pasilio Tosi get the nod to start, but the safe option is to go with Tyrell Lomax. In the locking drawer, I have made no switches in this department. Number 4, Scott Barrett, and number 5, Tupavai. They have a good system going at the moment with Barrett and Vai in the starting side, Tui Pilotu off the bench. Now, there is a chance that we could see that switch, or maybe even a chance for a youngster, but just in the way that Razor has selected his teams in the past, when the side loses, he often puts them back out there. But I feel like in some regards as well, up against the French last week, the All Blacks would almost still consider that a slight win, if that makes sense. It was only 1 point different. They did a lot right throughout that game. Definitely in the locking draw. I think Barrett was the quiet workhorse of the team throughout that game. And, of course, the loose forwards got a lot of credit, but I think Barrett deserves a little bit of it as well, just not for the decision-making. Maybe don't go for the 3 at the end of the game.
You can't really, when you look back at it now, it's one of those where you can't really say much about it. But, look, it was close enough a game where it could have swung in their favor, but of course France kind of ran away with it. But with the locking duo, I've also gone with Scott Barrett there at number 4, but I have gone with Patrick Tupiloto to come into the side at number 5. I think this is where they could give him a starting opportunity following his kind of 50th Test match. So
that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I feel like definitely up against the French, if there was any sort of milestone cap that could be given, you'd think that that's when Tui Pilotu would have earned it. But Tupavai still doing pretty well.
No, he can easily be in there as well. Yeah.
Of course, he got a little bit of stick for that offload that he threw that eventually led to Balbari's try. But, of course, we all know who started that downfall. Well, there were
so many mistakes in this game. Like, there's a lot of mistakes. I mean, the one which there was 2. Reiko's one and probably Wallace at TT. I was like, I couldn't believe both of them. But anyway, we'll talk about that today.
And the question is, have we kept those 2 in our starting side for this match? We move on to the loose forward trio, so we don't have to wait long. We saw the injury of Sam Cane. We saw the injury of Sama Penifina. The loose forward stocks are dropping. Who are your 3 for this game?
Yeah, so I was originally thinking of Finau, but of course, as you said, he did get injured there. So I think they just got to stick with Wallace at TT number 6. Like, they don't have really a lot of options there. I think they still have Christian Willie, if I'm not mistaken, who is available in this kind of frame. So he is a player that they could look to. But I think they will stick with Wallace at TT for this game. So that's what I've done. But the number 7, I mean, this is where kind of everything switches, because I would have had like Final, and then I would have gone with like Sevilla at the 7, and probably Satiti at the 8. But because of the Final injury, I've now had to go with Duxi Karifi to actually just start in this game, number 7, and then I've finished it off with Artis Sevilla at the number 8.
Okay, so for myself, I have also got Wallace Satiti as my number 6. Even in that game up against France when the All Blacks were under pressure, he still seems to be able to find those big moments, getting a turnover in the breakdown at important times. But overall, it's very tricky to know if Sama Penifina was available, whether or not we would have got to see Wallace Satiti in that number 8 jersey again here, or whether they would have maybe gone back to Finau off the bench, Satiti in the starting side. Number 7, this is actually where I've gone Peter Lakai again. I've decided after a massive shift last week,
I like that.
76, maybe even 78 minutes off the bench for Sama Penifina. He looked like he wasn't out of place in that All Black side, which is fantastic to see. Yes, there were a couple early errors that came from him, but also leading to a try for himself on starting. Well, I keep saying starting debut, but it's pretty much, 1 minute 30 or so, he wasn't on the field.
Yeah, it's one of those where, it's like,
it's about as close to starting as you can get. So Sama Penifina sadly will not be there for this game up against the Italians, which brings the opportunity for Peter Lakai. And we've got to remember, Wallace Satiti, one of the only reasons he got selected as a 6 was because of Ethan Blackadder's injury. And that was the opportunity that Satiti needed to break through. Perhaps that injury of Finau is what Lakai needs to do the same thing. Number 8, Adi Savia. I've decided to give him that chance in that 8 jersey, even though, is it cursed, that number 7 jersey, Tim? Everyone wanted Savia in that 7 jersey for so long, and then we finally get it for 90 seconds, and then it's gone. He's back to number 8 when Lakai makes his way on. Like, is it just not meant to be?
He honestly should be there. Yeah, so look, for me, I think Sevilla is a better 7 than an 8, because I've seen it more often throughout his career. But I can't argue that he was probably his best in that number 8 jersey, throughout last year, throughout the Rugby World Cup. So it's one of those where you can see both sides of it. But I just think for the players they have at the moment, I think Sevilla is definitely the better 8 for the meantime.
Alrighty, so just a couple switches across our 4-pack by the looks of it. Now moving on to the backline. Now this is where we could see some drastic changes for the ABs. In the 19 combination, I have made one change. Number 9, I have stuck with Cam Roygaard. I thought he was really great in the starting side. The switch, it was an interesting time, and I feel like it was premeditated because Roygaard seemed to be getting the better of that Roygaard versus Dupont battle. Yeah. And then they decided to take him off. Ratama making many errors throughout that short time he was on the park. Yeah. So I've stuck with Roygaard. And number 10, another man who made quite a few mistakes, whether people like to admit it or not, was Beauden Barrett. There was some bad decision-making throughout that game. And, he still had his decent moments.
I honestly can't remember. I honestly can't remember any of the...
one of which was the grubble when they were on attack. Really looking like a great passing opportunity out wide. Goes for the grubber. France kicked the ball 50 metres down the field. 3 errors, then Balbari scores the match-winning try for France. So that one in particular kind of sticks out as a Beauden Barrett fumble. But overall, it just seemed to be they couldn't get their go forward. It was one pass from the backs, and then it would be everyone hit the ball up. And that is where I actually thought we were going to see a little bit of that Beauden Barrett chip that we've mentioned so much throughout 2024, just to break up that defensive line. But, I think that they will make the switch just because that seems to be what they have done. They've gone McKenzie one game, Barrett the other, and vice versa. Yeah. So it seems like it's due for that switch. There is a chance they may even go Cortez Ratama and Damien McKenzie in the starting side, because Ratama, he needs some confidence. At the end of the day, that's 2 poor games in a row now for the youngster, and you don't want to make it a hat trick. So maybe up against the Italians could be where he can flourish.
Ratama's an interesting one, I'd say, for the future, because when you're thinking about, the 9s that All Blacks have to offer, again, if he has another good Super Rugby season, then he's guaranteed really for next year. But it's more like Fakatava, they've got Christie as well as Hoffman. So they got. You can even say Finaki if you want to as well. So they got some players in there. So it'll be a challenging spot. And again, with TJ obviously not being selected, they've got kind of technically 2 spots up there for grabs. Because I mean, Rorgod I think is just the one that's the standout. So Rorgod's the player I have gone with in this scenario, and I have also gone with not with Bowden Barrett, but I've gone with Mackenzie here at the number 10. I think that they'll try out Mackenzie here. It's what we saw actually the last time that these two sides actually played each other in the World Cup. So I think that duo would work pretty nicely in this game.
Of course, very successful game for the All Blacks in that one, up against the Italians. More people anticipating a closer game, and then in the end, a pretty big runaway. Isn't it interesting, though, that at the start of the Rugby Championship, when Rooigaard was injured, everyone was begging to see Cortez Ratama in the starting side. And, you know, they were trying out TJ and everyone's going, no, give Ratama the chance, give him another opportunity. And just in 1 week or 2 weeks, now all of a sudden everyone's saying, why is he in the squad? And it just shows how quickly opinions can change in a short period of time. It's more about
the opposition, I'd say, though. It's more about the opposition, I think, that you're playing against. Because, like, when you have Cortez Ratama, he should have been starting, I mean, did he start both games against Argentina back in the Rugby Championship? I don't think he did. I think they gave one of the games to...
They went with TJ.
Yeah, so that's where, like, I think in that particular game, you've got to give both of them to him. I can understand if you want to not go with him for, Springboks. I mean, that's like, you can understand, like, the experience from that point of view. But then Australia, you can kind of test him out there. But again, against Ireland, France is a big game as well. So it's tough fixtures.
And it was always going to be a weighted tour for the All Blacks, wasn't it? Having so many big games back to back to back. Currently at the moment, sitting 3 from 4. I feel like, they won't be too disappointed with that. If they can get out 4 from 5, 80% winning rate for November, it's probably a lot higher than a lot of people did anticipate going into this tour. So, we'll have to wait and see what chances they do give Ratama. But moving on to the centre pairing now. We saw the early injury of Jordie Barrett, so the question mark around whether or not he is available is still yet to be answered, mainly because we are filming this pretty much directly after the weekend of international rugby. So with that in mind, of course, if he is available, we'd probably maybe put him in there, but if not, who have you gone with in that centre pairing?
Well, I have gone with Jordie Barrett because I do think he will be available. I've gone with him at 12, and I've also gone with Red Go number 13. It's those where you have a thing in the mind of Razor here, and I think Jordie is the one where you can. It's kind of comes down towards that injury. Like, who do you put there? And there's a player I have in mind who I think should get an opportunity, but do I think Razor will do it? I don't know, because I'm thinking of AJ Lamb. He's been included in the side here, and then you also have a player like Che Fiaki actually who's been included as well. But he's more of like a travel cover. So his inclusion doesn't even feel like he'll get even selected for some reason. But I hope he gets an opportunity because he's an awesome player. But because that would be a cool combination of AJ Lamb and Che Fiaki, because that would work out pretty nicely as a 12-13 combination. But do I think Razor will do something like that? I don't think so. So I've gone with the standard combination of Jordie Barrett as well as Red Go.
So for myself, I've actually made the change, and it's a little bit in the situation of I do think Barrett, even if he's 100%, I think they may still consider resting him for this game just to not take that risk. Yeah. So number 12, in the mind of Razor, I've gone with David Havili. The type of player that in this situation, Razor will look through his list at who he can bring in. And yes, there's Anton Leonard-Brown, but I don't think Leonard-Brown really got the best momentum when it came to getting that ball going forward.
Yeah, he wasn't impactful.
So I think that they do need a possible switch there. And like you said, AJ Lamb would actually possibly fill that mold quite nicely, although he's been playing a little bit more of 13 rather than in that 12 jersey. So David Havili, number 12, number 13 with who I think they will select. Once again, I believe they'll go Rico Ioane. I think that he didn't have his best game up against the French, but Razor seems to like to give guys chance time after time to try and get them in form. Yeah. But honestly, like, this is where if Billy Proctor was available, I could have seen him.
I would definitely put Billy. This was a game for Billy, hands down, if he was available. Yeah.
In fact, that midfield combo of AJ Lamb, Billy Proctor would possibly be quite an exciting one for the future.
That's what I would have done, actually.
Sadly, we do not get to see it. But moving on to the back three now. Number 11, I have gone with, once again, Caleb Clark. Number 14, this is where I've decided to go with Sevu Reece. I feel like it's a great chance for him to just get more minutes. He didn't look the best up against the French. Once again, maybe AJ Lamb could find himself out on that wing, but it's just one of those really tricky ones of, I don't think Razor's handing out caps for the sake of it. You know, some of those guys, they're training with the side for a long time. Even the likes of Proctor and Satiti right before that Blackadder injury, they had to work extremely hard just to get half a start. So, yeah, I don't see Lamb getting that much game time. I would love to see it. I feel like up against the Italians would work quite nicely. Number 15, I have stuck with Will Jordan. Still a bit of a 50-50 game up against the French. Had some really good moments, but also it just seemed to be, not for just Jordan, but the whole New Zealand backline, the decision-making, I think, is the thing that really hurt them up against the French. Deciding when to run it, deciding when to pass it, and there were just some moments where it just got scrappy and New Zealand had no structure. So hopefully sticking with a relatively similar backline and adding, of course, that pure stability that David Havili brings to his side will completely sort those troubles out.
Yeah. Disability, but stability. But with my back three, I've pretty much gone with the exact same two as you in terms of the wingers. I have gone with, of course, Caleb Clark, number 11, and then Seba Reese, number 14. With 15, however, this is actually where I've gone with Stephen Perifetta. I think this is kind of where he could get a shot at the number 15 spot. I mean, again, they could go with Will Jordan there, and I wouldn't have any doubt about that, because, again, I'm more the merrier having Will Jordan have more minutes in the 15 jersey, as he just does need that more often. But I'd like to see Perifetta get an inclusion here, and I think that's probably the game that they would try to put him in here, so that's the reason why I put him in 15.
Righty, so once again, a few changes across our backline. So either way, we're either both going to be slightly wrong or slightly right. So we'll have to wait and see which one it is. For yourself, I assume you've gone 5-3 split for your bench here.
I don't think we'll ever go with 6-2 for a long time.
It doesn't normally work for the All Blacks when they try that one, does it?
Yeah.
Maybe a 4-4 could be on the cards. We haven't seen one of those in a while.
I would definitely not suggest that. Definitely not suggest that.
Best idea. Definitely not if you lose, like in that first game.
Go with 3-5. Just go with the front row and then have the rest as backs.
Well, that'd be interesting. Depending on who your backs are. I mean, David Havili, he's pretty versatile. He can play multiple positions, so perhaps stick him in the loose forward trio. But for yourself, Tim, front row replacements, who have you got?
Yeah, so for myself, this is where I've gone with the likes of Cody Taylor off the bench. Again, I was considering George Bell, but I just want to see Taylor get some more minutes. That's the reason why I've gone with him. And then, I've gone with just the tight and trusty of Ofatunga Fasi as well as Pasio Tosi. So that's my my front row off the bench.
Righty, so for myself, I've once again, just like yourself, gone Cody Taylor as their number 16. Number 17, this is where I've got Tamaiti Williams, so actually taking Ofatunga Fasi out of the side. And then number 18, a little bit of a forgotten man throughout these November internationals, even though he got many minutes off the bench in the Rugby Championship, and that is Fletcher Null. So an All Crusaders front row off the bench is what I've gone with in this match. And I feel like it's something that Razor would consider, not just because they're all Crusaders, but also because they have got that chemistry side of things, like not really based off the team that they play.
But you wear a red shirt? Oh, sorry,
yeah, there's a bit of red on it, isn't there? Although it's Tonga, which is an interesting one. Yeah. But nonetheless, moving on to number 19, I have got Patrick Tuipulotu. And number 20, this is where I've gone Duplessis Karefi for a chance for the ABs. He has been a standout in terms of that Wellington Lions season, as well as, I mean, we saw it for the All Blacks XB. He's had minutes under his belt, which is actually why I thought that they may have considered him in the starting lineup up against the French for that number 7 jersey if they weren't willing to shift Savia. But Tuipulotu and Duplessis Karefi, that is pure impact that they could bring later on in this game. That's the duo they go with.
Yeah, I mean, in my one, I've gone with Tupou off the bench. Again, it could be vice versa with Tuipulotu, and you could even give Fabian Holland an opportunity if you wanted to, because he's also included in the side. But it's just more, would Razor do that? I'm not sure. And then, of course, this is where I've gone with Peter Lakai off the bench, because again, I just think he's a better cover for the 7 and 8 rather than Duplessis. That's literally the only reason behind my thinking. It could be literally vice versa around, like you've done. But I think Peter Lakai maybe off the bench.
My pure reasoning for Lakai not off my bench is because he's my starting 7. But
indeed,
it's one of our only real big changes, and one of the biggest debated points, isn't it? That number 7 jersey. What do they do from here? Is this where, I know that you love to bring him up every single video that we get the opportunity, but is this where maybe your number 8 could have come in and then had Savia as your number 7?
Maybe. I mean, it all just depends on the injuries, really, on the number 7 front, because there's too many people. You've had Kane, you've had Papa Lee, you've had Jacobson, you've had even Blackadder who can play there as well. So like you had a lot of players who just have injured themselves. So it's given opportunities towards players who I think deserve to kind of be eventually in the All Blacks, which is kind of cool to see. But just at the same time, you want your best kind of side, going up towards the World Cup down the line. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, that's the thing. It's been the most talked about jersey, and it's now got like the most options when it comes to who can play it. Like so far this season, like you said, Papa Lee, Sam Kane, you've got Savia, you've got now Peter Lakai, you've got the option of Duplessis Karefi who came into the side. Like they're running out of number 8s and they're running out of number 6s. They've only really got 1 or 2 remaining in both of those positions with that Leo Willie cover that he also brings. But we move on now to the backs, the difference makers, or at least they'll want to be in this game. Last week, we saw a little bit of an impact from Damian McKenzie. We certainly saw the wrong kind of impact from Cortez Aratama. And then Leonard Brown, he was out there on the field. There wasn't a huge amount to talk about for Leonard Brown overall. We didn't see
it wasn't
huge moments, but
it was just a
stock standard.
Yeah.
But for yourself, Tim, how many of those 3 names that I just mentioned are off your bench again?
Not a lot of them. I have gone with. I think this been maybe a bit obvious. I've gone with TJ off the bench. I just think you can go Cortez. Honestly, you probably should actually go Cortez now that I think about it. But I've just gone with TJ because it would be his final game, and also now that I think about it, he could actually start. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it more, but I've gone with TJ off the bench, and then following him, this is where I've gone with Beauden Barrett. And then to finish off, I have given an opportunity for AJ Lamb. We'll see if he comes on or not, but I just think there could be an opportunity for him because he covers so many positions that I just feel he's a good versatile player to have.
So I'm a little bit similar to yourself. 21, I've got TJ Perenara. I do think that he'll play some sort of factor in this game. Definitely, like you said, with it being the last game for the ABs. Plus, he's had to sit patiently for 4 matches and not be involved. So I feel like Razor, sometimes, yes, he has his favourite players and who he wants to see more, but I would still think everyone's going to get minutes who was in that original starting kind of side. Maybe not so much the injury cover, but those guys who were there from the get-go, I would think will get minutes. And I think he's the only player, if I'm not wrong, that hasn't been given minutes in that regard. Like the likes of Billy Proctor, who was named in the original side, we've seen 1 game for George Bell, not a huge amount of minutes, like pretty much the same as TJ who hasn't played. But other than that, I don't think there's anyone else that I can think of. Oh, other than maybe Fletcher Null. Has he had any minutes so far?
I don't think so. I mean, he may have. Did he play in the first one? I don't think he did. So, no.
Although I think there was also a bit of an injury, wasn't there, at the end of the Rugby Championship. So perhaps, Ethan de Groot. How can we forget?
Well, that's just more disciplinary. But yes. I mean, that's yeah.
But number 22, I have gone with Beauden Barrett. I think that impact off the bench could be massive for them. Yes, it's up against the Italians, but we cannot underestimate this Italian side. When they get rolling, perhaps they could use Beauden Barrett for that last-minute impact. And then number 23, this is where I have stuck with Anton Leonard-Brown, although if it was my lineup, which of course will be coming out later on in the week, I would love to see AJ Lamb somewhere in the side. But nonetheless, that is our starting lineup and reserve of who we think Razor will be going with in his All Blacks side, taking on the Italians. The last match of the 5 that they have got. It's going to be a big one. Hopefully not as high scoring in terms of the margin between the two sides as that Rugby World Cup. I feel like we want to see some sort of closeness in the way that these two sides play and perhaps some very entertaining rugby as well. But thank you all very much for tuning in. Be sure to check out Rugbyitch's YouTube channel. His link will be not just in the comments, but also in the description as well. And let us know who you guys think Razor could be selecting in terms of whether it's going to be makeshift, a whole heap of changes, or maybe the strong side trying to make just a couple little switches. Many answers will soon be known. That sounded very
storyline.
It sounded like it was building into something.
Building into something, yeah.
Yeah, but really it's not. It's just a team lineup that's happening midweek, which we will, of course, let you know about on the channel as well. But nonetheless, if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you all for the next one.